First road trip, Gilgamesh. The first hero's quest wasn't for treasure or glory, it was a quest to not die. He was a king who was two-thirds god, but after his best friend died, he started panicking about that one-third human part. So he set off on the world's first ever road trip to find Utnapishtim, the only immortal guy on Earth. The test to live forever? Just stay awake for a week. Gilgamesh immediately face-plants into a deep sleep. For a consolation prize, he finds a youth-restoring plant, but a snake yoinks it while he's taking a bath. A total L. He was the first to realize that real immortality isn't living forever. It's what you build that lasts. Egypt's afterlife insurance. Mummification. The ancient Egyptians didn't search for immortality. They planned for it like a corporate project. Their whole goal was securing a premium spot in the afterlife, and it was a system, a kind of cosmic insurance policy. The main rule was preserving the body so your soul had a place to come back to. This whole idea was based on their god Osiris, who got chopped up by his brother, then pieced back together by his wife, becoming the very first mummy. From then on, a good life and the proper funeral rites were all you needed. They turned immortality from a rare, divine gift into an achievable outcome for anyone who could afford the premium. Ambrosia. But while the Egyptians were busy filling out celestial paperwork, the gods in Greece were just grabbing a snack, ambrosia and nectar. For the gods on Mount Olympus, immortality was basically a diet plan. They maintained their eternal life by chowing down on these divine superfoods, which supposedly came from the horn of Zeus's magical goat foster mom. But ambrosia wasn't just for them. The hero Achilles was made nearly invincible when his mom bathed him in it. Keyword, nearly. She held him by his heel, leaving one tiny spot totally mortal. It was a classic rookie mistake. This introduces a big theme. Immortality isn't something you're born with, it's something you consume. To live forever, you have to eat the right stuff, and you better not miss a spot. Golden apples. The Norse gods of Asgard weren't naturally immortal. They were basically one missed snack away from getting old. They relied on a cosmic skincare routine, the golden apples grown by the goddess Idun. Without their daily dose, the mighty gods would start to age, their hair turning gray. This created a major crisis when the trickster god Loki helped a giant kidnap Idun. As the gods started getting wrinkles, they totally freaked out and threatened Loki with a very painful death unless he fixed his mess. So he borrowed a magical falcon cloak, cleverly transformed Idun into a nut, and flew back with her in his claws. Their eternal life wasn't a guarantee, it was a cosmic anti-aging cream they could never ever skip. The peaches of immortality. Chinese mythology offers another divine fruit, but this one came with upgrade options. The peaches of immortality grew in an orchard and came in 3 tiers, like a celestial subscription service. The basic 3,000-year peaches granted immortality. The 6,000-year premium peaches gave you eternal youth and flight. And the top-tier 9,000-year peaches made you as eternal as heaven itself. The most famous story involves hiring the fox to guard the henhouse. The troublemaking Monkey King Sun Wukong was given the job of protector of the peaches. He immediately ate all the best ones, got OP, and caused cosmic chaos. He was the worst employee in the history of ever. Divine nectar. So whether it was apples or peaches, it seems like most gods got their immortality from the celestial produce aisle. But over in India, they weren't eating it. They were drinking it. Amrita. In Hindu myths, this was the divine nectar that granted immortality, and it wasn't just sitting on a shelf. It had to be created through a massive cosmic event called the churning of the ocean of milk. The gods and demons decided to team up, using a mountain as a churning rod and a giant serpent as the rope to churn the entire ocean for 1,000 years. But after all that work, the gods, not being great at sharing, pulled a fast one on the demons and kept all the Amrita for themselves, securing their own immortality. So much for teamwork. This frames immortality not as a given, but as a precious, powerful resource worth fighting a war over. The Fountain of Youth. One of the most enduring myths is a legendary spring that can literally reverse the aging process. The story is famously tied to the Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de León, who was supposedly searching for it in Florida in the early 1500s. But here's the plot twist. Historical records show Ponce de León never even mentioned a fountain in his writings. The story was attached to him by chroniclers years later, who clearly loved a good narrative more than they loved facts. The legend was likely a mashup of old European myths and indigenous Caribbean stories, but the image of a world-weary conquistador searching for a magical spa was just too good a story to let go. The Alchemist's Dream. While explorers searched for immortality on the map, others tried to cook it up in a lab. Alchemists were the original mad scientists, and their ultimate goal was creating the Philosopher's Stone. This legendary substance wasn't just for turning lead into gold, it could also be used to create the Elixir of Life, a potion that granted the drinker eternal life. But their work wasn't simple chemistry. It was a mix of science and magic, full of cryptic symbols like the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. This represented the eternal cycle of destruction and recreation at the heart of their quest. It was the world's most ambitious DIY project, brewing eternal life right in your basement. The real Nicholas Flamel. This quest for a magical stone created legends that blurred the line between fact and fiction, and no one blurred that line better than the most famous alchemist of all, who might not have been an alchemist at all, Nicolas Flamel. The most famous alchemist in history was actually a real dude, a successful French bookseller in 14th century Paris who got rich the old-fashioned way. But nearly 200 years after his recorded death, a legend emerged that Flamel had never died. The story claimed he had secretly discovered the Philosopher's Stone and, with his wife, became immortal. There's no historical evidence the real Flamel was involved in alchemy, but the legend took on a life of its own, with reported sightings of him for centuries. He became so famous for it that he appeared in Harry Potter, cementing his mythical reputation for a new generation. The Holy Grail. In Christian and Arthurian legend, the path to immortality suddenly got a whole lot more exclusive. This wasn't something you could find or make. You had to be worthy. The Grail was said to be the cup from the Last Supper, and the Knights of the Round Table were obsessed with finding it. But only the purest of them all, Sir Galahad, was deemed good enough to complete the quest. He didn't just get to live longer, he ascended to a spiritual immortality in heaven. This myth changes the rules entirely. Immortality isn't a prize for being strong or clever. It's a reward for having a perfect moral resume. The Tree of Life. Across countless cultures, the source of eternal life wasn't a cup or a potion, but a plant. This symbol is everywhere. In Greek mythology, the golden apples grew on a tree of life. In Norse mythology, the apples of youth grew at the base of the world tree, Yggdrasil. And in the Garden of Eden, it was the one thing Adam and Eve were forbidden from touching. Why? Because eating its fruit would have made them immortal like God. It was the original case of the developers not wanting the users to access admin privileges. The message was clear. True, lasting life stems from one single cosmic source, the Ankh. We're so obsessed with not dying that we created a whole visual language for it. The Egyptian Ankh is the most famous, a cross with a loop on top known as the Key of Life, and held by gods to show their power over life and death. Then you have the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, representing the eternal cycle of renewal. But a stranger one was the peacock. Early Christians believed its flesh never decayed, making it the perfect mascot for an incorruptible soul. These weren't just cool drawings. They were ancient logos for the concept of forever. Be careful what you wish for. So you got immortality. The myths are very clear. You better read the terms and conditions. The Greek story of Tithonus is the ultimate cautionary tale. Eos, the goddess of the dawn, fell hard for a mortal prince. She begged Zeus to make him immortal, and Zeus was like, sure, whatever. But in her excitement, Eos forgot to check one tiny, crucial box, eternal youth. She had one job. So Tithonus lived forever, but he also aged forever, shriveling up into a raisin until he was just a babbling voice. Eventually, he was turned into a cicada. Immortality without a youth guarantee isn't a gift. It's the universe's cruelest prank. The Wandering Jew. Another flavor of cursed immortality wasn't about aging, but about never getting to sit down. The legend of the Wandering Jew is about a man who taunted Jesus on the way to the crucifixion. In return, he was cursed to walk the earth, never aging and never resting until the second coming. It's immortality as the ultimate punishment, an endless, boring walk. He can never die. but he can never truly stop and live, forced to be an outsider everywhere, watching history pass by like a tourist who lost his group. It's not a long life. It's an eternal sentence on a cosmic treadmill with no off switch. The Eight Immortals. So far, living forever seems like a pretty terrible deal. You either turn into an insect or get stuck on a never-ending hike. But not all immortal humans were cursed. Meet Taoism's version of a superhero team, the Eight Immortals. This crew wasn't born special. They were regular mortals who achieved immortality through hard work, wisdom, and mastering spiritual principles. They basically leveled up their humanity. Each one has a quirky origin, like Li Tieguai, whose spirit returned from a trip to find his body had been accidentally cremated. He had to possess the first body he could find, a lame beggar. They weren't cursed or given a gift with a catch. They earned their immortality. This is the optimistic take. Eternal life not as a cosmic trap, but as the ultimate self-improvement trophy. Count of Saint-Germain. This guy was a real person who basically had main character energy in the 18th century Europe. He was a charismatic adventurer, scientist, and composer who popped up in royal courts and seemed to be an expert on literally everything. But here's the thing. People who met him over a 50-year period swore he never aged a single day. The famous philosopher Voltaire, a man who loved to roast everyone, seriously called him a man who knows everything and who never dies. Was he an immortal time traveler? Or just the world's most talented con artist with a killer skincare routine? The legend is so good, maybe it doesn't even matter. Vampires. In many stories, immortality isn't a gift. It's a curse that turns you into a monster. They're undead beings who have to literally steal life from others by drinking their blood to keep their own unnatural existence going. A total perversion of the natural cycle. But here's a wild folklore theory. What if stories about vampires and werewolves were just propaganda? A brilliant disinformation campaign created by actual human-looking immortals to hide in plain sight. They made everyone scared of fangs and claws, so nobody would suspect the person who's been their friendly neighbor for the last 200 years, the Phoenix. But not all immortal creatures were hiding in the shadows and drinking blood. One of them preferred to just set itself on fire. The Phoenix. This legendary bird had a completely different take on eternal life. Instead of just not dying, it lived cyclically. After 1,000 years, it would build a nest of spices, burst into flames, and then get reborn from the ashes, young and totally refreshed. It was immortality as the ultimate reset button, the cosmic equivalent of restarting your computer when it gets slow. The idea of renewal was so powerful that early Christians adopted the phoenix as a symbol for the resurrection of Jesus. This wasn't about avoiding death. It was about conquering it through an endless do-over. Reincarnation. Not all immortality is about one single, endless life. What if you just got to hit the respawn button forever? That's the basic idea behind reincarnation, a core belief in many Eastern religions. Your soul doesn't die. It just gets a new body for the next playthrough. But there's a catch. Your actions in this life, your karma, determine your next character build. It's a cosmic skill tree. Live a good life, and you might get an upgrade. Live a bad one, and you could come back as a bug. The ultimate goal isn't to keep racking up extra lives. It's to play the game so perfectly that you finally get to quit the cycle altogether. The Elixir of the Moon Princess. In one of Japan's oldest stories, the elixir of life gets left on red. The tale is about Kaguya Hime, a celestial princess from the moon who was found inside a glowing bamboo stalk. The Emperor of Japan fell completely in love with her, but eventually, her people came to take her home. As a parting gift, she left him a taste of the elixir of life. But the Emperor, totally devastated, saw no point in playing life on solo mode forever. He ordered his soldiers to take the elixir to the top of Mount Fuji, the tallest mountain in Japan, and burn it, hoping the smoke might reach her on the moon. A rare story where the ultimate prize is seen as completely worthless. The Land of Eternal Youth. In Celtic myths, immortality was a bit simpler. It was a place with one very, very strict rule. You didn't need a magic potion to stay young, you just needed to move to the right neighborhood. This was Tir Nanog, the Land of Youth, a magical island where no one aged and sickness didn't exist. The hero Oisin went there with his fairy lover, And what felt like just 3 years to him was actually 300 years back in the human world. When he got homesick, he returned on a magical horse but was given one critical warning: do not touch the ground. He slipped, his foot touched Irish soil, and boom, he instantly aged 300 years and turned to dust. It's immortality with the universe's most brutal terms of service violation: Immortal Jellyfish. For thousands of years, immortality was just a myth. And then, science found it. In the ocean lives a tiny creature called Turritopsis dohrnii, the immortal jellyfish. This thing, which is smaller than your pinky nail, has an insane survival mechanism. When it gets injured or just old, it can reverse its own life cycle. The adult jellyfish literally hits the undo button on aging, turns back into a baby polyp, and starts its entire life over again, genetically identical. It has effectively beaten death by old age. The only catch? They still get eaten by predators. So while they're biologically immortal, they aren't invincible. Nature figured out the ultimate life hack before we ever did. Cryonics. Science may not have found our jellyfish gene yet, but some people are trying to press the pause button on death itself. Cryonics is the practice of preserving people who have been declared legally dead at incredibly low temperatures, usually in liquid nitrogen. The hope is that future medical technology will be advanced enough to repair whatever killed them and bring them back to life. To prevent cells from being destroyed by ice crystals, they use special chemicals to turn the water in the body into a glass-like solid. It's a scientific Hail Mary, a massive bet that future generations will be smart enough to fix today's problems, including death. And this isn't just a wild sci-fi theory. It's a real business, with a waiting list and a price tag. The Alchemist Foundation. This life extension facility in Arizona is the modern, high-tech equivalent of an Egyptian pharaoh building a tomb. It currently stores 199 patients in massive, thermos-like tanks filled with liquid nitrogen. For a minimum of $200,000, you can have your whole body preserved. But if you're on a budget, you can pay just $80,000 to preserve only your brain. The idea is that your brain holds your personality and memories, and a new body could theoretically be cloned or grown for you in the future. It's a massive investment based on the hope of a future awakening, proving we're still just as obsessed with cheating death as the pharaohs were. Digital immortality. Freezing your body is the modern-day pyramid, but some people think that's thinking too small. Why save the box when you can just save the software? Here comes mind uploading. This is the idea that you could get rid of the body problem completely. The plan is to scan every single connection in your brain and turn it into a perfect digital copy, basically turning your consciousness into a video game save file. Your personality, your memories, all the data that makes you you would exist forever in a virtual world. You could ditch your biological body, your meat suit, and just live in the cloud, free from sickness and decay. It's the ultimate backup plan, escaping the hardware right before it fails for good and hitting continue for eternity. Kurzweil's Singularity. So where does this 4,000-year-old quest finally end? According to futurist Ray Kurzweil, it ends with us going full digital. He predicts that by 2045, technological progress will hit an unstoppable hyperdrive, a point called the Singularity. He believes around this time, we'll be uploading our minds and merging with AI, becoming a new kind of being altogether. It's a wild theory, but it brings the whole story full circle. The epic quest that started with a king terrified of his body dying could end with humanity deciding the body was just a starter pack, finally ready for a permanent upgrade. If you enjoyed this, stick around for the next one. And hey, subscribing wouldn't hurt.